What I applied for was an Adobe Connect license. I have had some experience with Adobe Connect before. I've used it at a previous institution that I worked at, where we delivered the course entirely using Adobe Connect as the platform. It was a distance learning course. So I was very familiar with the functionality and how it works. So when I came here, I was really keen to get my hands on the Adobe software so that I could use it to support some of the face-to-face stuff that we were doing. So the license essentially was for me to have the Adobe Connect platform, and the impetus for that was to integrate it into some of the feedback mechanisms that we were using. Well, we'd had some relatively poor feedback on feedback, and it wasn't just feedback on assessed work, it was feedback in general. So anything that students were hoping and wanting to get feedback on, we had been quite poorly scored in previous student surveys. So we were tackling a problem that essentially had been identified through quite a sort of restrictive box ticking mechanism, where people say they're not happy with feedback, but you don't actually quite tease out from a survey why. And my experience of using an interactive way of giving feedback, whether it's voice files or in this case a combination of voice and screen, is that students respond to that really well. And what we initially used it for was a situation where we would send them feedback in the usual way on a written piece of work, but we would supplement that with a link to a recording, an Adobe recording, with one of or a number of us talking to the student about that piece of work. So it was kind of breaking down that barrier of the student getting an email, opening the feedback and going, oh. So because however much red pen there is on a piece of work, it always looks like more red pen than anything else. So it was about trying to break that response and saying, okay, hi, it's me, hopefully you've got this feedback, and just to supplement that with, this was a really good piece of work, it's improved, So by the time they actually opened it, they'd seen me talking to them and they'd had all the good news before potentially they looked at the red pen, and they responded to that really well.
Excellent.
They loved it. It's a master's programme that we run. It's a MSc in Food Safety and Quality Management, and traditionally, because of NRI's background, our students come from developing countries, so most of them are international students. So they're already facing a lot of challenges. They're facing, coming to a new country, maybe language barriers. A lot of them will have undergraduate degrees from their home country, which sometimes are not necessarily commensurate with what we would expect, particularly in terms of study skills. So sometimes they have a bit of a shock adjusting to the level of study skills that are that we would expect at master's level. So it's even with the best will in the world and all of the preparation around that, normally the first piece of assessed work they get is challenging. So this whole thing of not wanting to demoralise them, wanting to make sure that they felt that there was a positivity around it, and it was all about trying to encourage them rather than demoralise them, and I think that's really important. Yeah, it has. I mean, I think students have become, I think what's really exciting about it is this has now become an expectation, which brings with it obviously this whole series of its own challenges, because this was a pilot, we didn't know if it was going to work. So essentially now we've done that, and now students expect that approach all the time. So it's a question now of working out how we are going to engage other lecturers, other people that are delivering aspects of the course, so that expectation is met consistently. And that is always a challenge, because people have their own style, don't they? Everybody has their own way of doing something, and I think even the way you give feedback is a very personal thing. I think they all thought I was completely bonkers when I started, and I guess you know, having done it before, having taught distance learning before, I was very comfortable with the technology, very comfortable with talking to a laptop, which is not everyone's cup of tea. So the skills, you know, that you need to get to literally sit and talk as something along the kind of newsreader, you know, sort of skills. So I think there are challenges around that. But I mean, my colleagues that work with me on the programme were really keen to give it a go, and then play it back and say, oh, I can't possibly send the student that, you know, and do it again, you know, and the more you do it, you know, the easier it gets. But I mean, essentially, it's like having a one-way conversation, which, you know, most academics like that. They don't like people answering them back. So the fact that you get the opportunity just to talk at the screen is good. It's fine. Yeah, absolutely. And we used it at Christmas as well. So it wasn't just you. So I think this is one of the other things. Once you get used to doing it, it becomes a much more sort of habitual thing that you would revert to. It becomes a sort of default position. So rather than sending "you've all done very well this semester, have a jolly Christmas" email, we sent a "hi everybody, you know, this is us signing off, you know, have a lovely break, you know, for those of you that do Christmas, enjoy, for those of you that, you know, that don't do Christmas, just enjoy the break away from us." And, you know, so again, to send that rather than the, you know, the standard email seems, even though we were talking to the same group, it seems much more personal somehow than just getting the "dear all" email, you know. I think the other thing, one particular student last year sent me an email saying, and he had done a particularly good piece of work. So apart from the fact, I was very ebullient about, you know, the quality of his written work, and it was a really good piece of work. But I'd sent him a recording saying, "This is just fabulous, well done, you know, this is just super, la la." And he'd sent it home to his wife and kids. And he said, you know, his wife was so proud, and I think that's brilliant, because that means that the sacrifices that these students are making suddenly seem a lot more worthwhile to the people that they've left behind. So we have got a lot of students that are older, that have families that, you know, that they leave. That's a massive sacrifice, and I don't think we should ever forget that. We're certainly not going to let the licence go. We've renewed the licence. What we're hoping to do is get to a position whereby everybody here that wants an Adobe Connect licence can have one. And then, because at the moment, obviously, the licence is mine, but other people, I can allow people to do certain things on the system, but they can't administer the system. So, you know, the possibility that our colleagues could have their own licence, that they could start to, you know, use it, work with it, see what it might do for them. We have a lot of research-based colleagues here who I think could definitely use it instead of the amount of work they do on Skype. I mean, it has so much better functionality than that. It's so much more sophisticated than that. I think that would be great. So what we're hoping to do is take what we've still got and then run some sort of collegial demos and talk about what it is that we've done and why it's been a success. Because, you know, with technology, if you want people to use technology, you've got to solve a problem for them. And I think there's lots of problems academics struggle with that, you know, that Adobe could help them solve. Well, I don't think it's terribly difficult at all. I mean, I think it's a lot more simple than something like Moodle, for example, which, you know, I think does require a level of, you know, of aptitude. I mean, it's pretty. It makes sense, but intuitive. That's the word I'm looking for. It's pretty intuitive. So, yeah, once you get the hang of it, I mean, once you get the hang of it, it's simple. And I think this whole notion that you can store recordings, edit recordings, you know, you can have all sorts of different functionality on it. It's great. Fingers crossed. We haven't repeated the survey. We'll do that. That's going to happen, I think, imminently. Yeah. But fingers crossed. Yeah. I mean, I have made my pledge and said, you know, if I can't imagine that it won't do anything other than improve it. And obviously it's not the only thing that will have improved our feedback, because we've worked very hard at improving the quality of written feedback and face-to-face feedback and all that. We had feedback clinics, for example. We ran a series of feedback clinics last semester where at a given time every week students could come and literally just talk about feedback, and they were incredibly popular as well. So it's a whole suite, it's one of a whole suite of things that we've done, but in terms of using technology and seeing how students respond to that, I think that's really good. If we haven't, you know what, then I quit.